He had the power to end the greatest war in human history in just 1 minute. A warrior so powerful that his arrows could change the fate of gods and men before the first blow was struck. But instead of glory, he met death. Not on the battlefield, but before he even stepped into it. He was not weak. He was not arrogant. He was in fact too righteous. And in a world ruled by dharma and karma, sometimes being too just is the greatest threat of all. His name was whispered with awe. His vow was unbreakable, and his power unimaginable. He came to fight for justice, but what he encountered was a test of divine cunning, a cosmic trap designed not to destroy him, but to silence him. Why would a warrior who stood for fairness be stopped by the very gods who claim to defend truth? Why would Krishna himself ask for his head? This is not just a story of war. It's a story of divine strategy, of moral paradox, and of a soul whose death revealed more about the Mahabharata than the war itself. This is the forgotten story of Barbarik, the warrior who could end it all and was never allowed to begin. Barbarik was not born for ordinary battles. He was born with a fire in his soul and a destiny too heavy for a boy his age. Grandson of Bhima, the fierce Pandava giant, Barbarik inherited a warrior's blood, but he was raised far from the glory and chaos of Hastinapura. His mother, Morvi, daughter of the mighty Rakshasa Gatotkacha, taught him the code of honor. And from a young age, Barbarik knew only one path: to fight for the side that was losing. Always. That was his vow. A sacred promise made not for pride, but for compassion. He believed that power meant responsibility, that strength should protect the weak, not glorify the strong. He meditated, he trained, he prayed. And in time, he was gifted with 3 divine arrows by the goddess herself. Each one unstoppable. One to mark the enemy, one to destroy them all, and one to return safely. With these arrows, no army could stand before him. No god could defy his aim. He became a walking balance of cosmic justice, a force that would correct the scales of war with a single decision. When whispers of the great Kurukshetra war reached his ears, Barbarik prepared to join, but not as a Pandava, not as a Kaurava. He asked only one question: who is losing? That was the side he would fight for. His resolve was terrifying. For in the eyes of this young warrior, the battle was not about politics or revenge. It was about balance, fairness, dharma. As he rode towards the battlefield on his blue horse, bow in hand, even the earth seemed to tremble. The gods watched in silence. The fate of the war shifted. And then came Krishna, smiling, serene. But behind that divine smile hid a storm. For Krishna knew what no one else could see, that Barbarik's vow would break the very law of karma, that his fairness would erase the deeper purpose of the war. If he joined the losing side, the tide would turn. Then he would shift again and again, until no justice remained, only endless victory and no lesson. So Krishna appeared before him, not to welcome, but to test. Disguised as a humble Brahmin, Krishna asked the boy about his power. Barbarik answered without pride. He spoke only truth. He could end the Mahabharata in a minute. That's when Krishna knew this warrior must not fight. Not because he was evil, but because he was too pure. When Barbarik arrived at the edge of Kurukshetra, the ground itself seemed to shift. His presence wasn't loud, but it shook the unseen realms. The devas held their breath. The ancestors whispered. The cosmic wheel paused for a moment, as if time waited to see what this boy would do. Mounted on his blue horse carrying only 3 arrows and a silent vow, Barbarik didn't look like a god, but his power was enough to end gods and men alike. Krishna watched from afar. He knew this moment was coming. He had seen it in the fold of time, in the ripple of destiny. A warrior had appeared, not to take sides, but to bend the very concept of war. Barbarik's vow was simple: fight for the side that is losing. A promise that came from a place of compassion, of deep morality. But that very morality was about to tear the purpose of the Mahabharata apart. Disguised as an old Brahmin, Krishna approached him with a smile that hid storms. "Young warrior," he said gently, "where do you ride with such determination in your eyes?" Barbarik bowed with respect. "To the battlefield. I've come to fulfill my dharma." "And what is your dharma?" the Brahmin asked. "Fight for the weak," he replied, "to stand with the side that suffers." Krishna's eyes narrowed. "And how will you choose your side?" "I will observe who is losing," Barbarik said, calm and confident. "And I will fight for them. Always." That answer, so noble, so righteous, sent a quiet terror through Krishna's heart. Because Barbarik didn't realize the trap he carried within himself. Krishna stepped closer. "But if your side begins to win, what then?" Barbarik's voice did not falter. "Then I will switch sides. I must always defend the weaker. And if you keep doing this again and again, won't you eventually destroy both sides?" Barbarik paused. For the first time, he hesitated. The logic of it crashed against his heart. "Perhaps," he said, "in the end, only I would remain." That was the revelation. That was the danger. Krishna saw clearly what others could not. Barbarik's intention was pure, but his presence would erase the very lessons this war was meant to teach. Kurukshetra wasn't just a war of politics, it was a war of dharma. Every loss, every death, every betrayal carried within it the seeds of cosmic truth. The war was a mirror, showing men their karma, unraveling pride, testing devotion. But if Barbarik fought, he would overwrite all of it. His power would silence karma, no struggle, no learning. Only one arrow and it would all be over. And so Krishna, still in disguise, asked the most terrifying question a god could ask a mortal. "If your power is truly that immense, would you give it up for a higher purpose?" Barbarik looked confused. "You mean not fight?" "I mean," Krishna said slowly, "would you offer your head if that would serve dharma?" The question fell like thunder in a clear sky. Barbarik didn't answer at first. He looked to the horizon, where the war would soon begin. His eyes were not afraid, only thoughtful. He had trained all his life for this moment. He had dreamed of battle, of justice. But now, justice looked different. "If my death will protect the true path," he whispered, "then I offer it. Not out of defeat, but as my greatest offering." Krishna dropped the disguise. The illusion faded. The blue skin, the divine light, the flute of eternity, all returned. Barbarik bowed deeply, now realizing to whom he had spoken. He had not met a Brahmin. He had met Vishnu himself, without anger, without resistance. Barbarik drew his sword and offered his neck, but Krishna was not cruel. He accepted the sacrifice and transformed it into something sacred. He did not let the boy fade into silence. Instead, he took Barbarik's severed head and placed it atop a hill overlooking Kurukshetra. There, Krishna granted him one final boon. "You shall witness the entire war, with eyes beyond illusion, with vision beyond the veils of ego. You shall see not who fights, but why." And so it was. For 18 days, Barbarik's head watched the battle. He saw Bhishma fall. He saw Arjuna hesitate. He saw Karna's secrets burn under the sun. He saw Krishna's strategies, Duryodhana's pride, Draupadi's vengeance, and the unbearable price of dharma. He saw truth, raw, brutal, divine. And in the end, when the dust settled, when the corpses of kings filled the soil and the survivors cried victory, only one being had seen the war with complete clarity. Not the Pandavas, not the sages, not even Krishna's soldiers. Only Barbarik, the silent eye of truth, knew what truly happened in Kurukshetra. And that was the purpose of his sacrifice. Barbarik did not fight. He did not shed blood. He did not choose sides. And yet, he became the only soul who truly understood the Mahabharata. From his place on the hill, far above the chaos of Kurukshetra, his severed head watched it all. The screams, the silence, the prayers, the betrayals, He watched Bhishma fall like a sacred tree whose roots had cracked under the weight of duty. He saw Arjuna paralyzed by compassion, refusing to kill his kin. He witnessed Karna's torment, a warrior bound by loyalty, drowning in secrets. And above all, he saw Krishna's every move, not as a kingmaker, but as the charioteer of destiny itself. What did Barbarik see that others could not? He saw that Dharma is not clean. It's not black or white. It bleeds. It contradicts. It demands choices that have no winners. Dharma is not about who is right. It's about what must be done, even when the heart breaks doing it. Barbarik saw that even the noblest warriors carry shadows. The Pandavas, hailed as righteous, made decisions that led to destruction. The Kauravas, branded as villains, were also victims of fate and upbringing. He saw that every action in war is coated in layers of karma, lifetimes of unseen causes manifesting through swords and sorrow. And so, in watching, Barbarik became something more than a warrior. He became a seer of truth, a symbol of the detached. Witness the Sakshi who sees all, judges none, and understands everything. His sacrifice is one of the most profound in all of Hindu mythology, not because he died young or because he was powerful, but because he surrendered his ego completely. He had no desire for fame, no hunger for revenge, no need to impose his will. He bowed to the divine plan, even when it demanded the unthinkable. To walk away from a battle he could have ended for the sake of a truth he didn't fully understand. That is what makes Barbarik dangerous, not to others, but to our own illusions. In him, we see the part of us that wants to fix things quickly, to end pain, to make justice instant, to force balance. But Dharma doesn't work that way. Sometimes the suffering must unfold. Sometimes the soul must pass through the fire to emerge transformed. Sometimes a war must happen, not for victory, but for revelation. Barbarik's tale warns us of the arrogance hidden in righteousness, the belief that our idea of justice is better than the divine plan. He teaches us that power without wisdom becomes interference, that even the most noble vow can be a weapon if it ignores the subtle fabric of karma. And yet, Krishna honored him. By placing his head as the eternal witness, Krishna did not cast Barbarik aside. He elevated him. He gave him the role that no warrior could play, the role of the divine observer, untouched by bias, untouched by blood, and therefore the only one worthy of judgment. In the end, when the war concluded, the Pandavas themselves asked Krishna, "Who deserves the credit for our victory?" They expected him to name Arjuna or Bhima or even himself, but Krishna turned to the hill and pointed. "That one," he said. "He saw it all. Let him speak." And Barbarik, with eyes that had seen the full horror and glory of Kurukshetra, spoke a truth that silenced the world. "I saw Krishna fight through every warrior. I saw his hand in every arrow, every fall, every act of dharma. It was never the strength of the Pandavas that won this war. It was the will of the divine." With that, the illusion shattered. The Mahabharata was not a tale of heroes and villains. It was a cosmic dance, where each step was choreographed by karma, each note played by the breath of Vishnu himself. Barbarik's story survives not in temples, but in the silence between wars, in the questions that ache inside the soul. What is true justice? What is my role? When should I act, and when must I surrender? His sacrifice whispers a forgotten wisdom, that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is to not fight, to surrender, to observe, to let the divine reveal its plan, even if it demands your head. Barbarik teaches us that real power is not domination, it is understanding, and real victory is not winning the war. It is knowing why the war had to happen at all. He never fought. He never chose a side. And yet, his sacrifice became the spiritual axis of the greatest war in history. Barbarik was forgotten by many. His name rarely echoes in the tales of Kurukshetra. No temple sings his glory. No monument bears his sword. But perhaps that is the point. His story is not one of conquest, but of clarity, the kind of clarity that comes when the ego is silenced and truth is seen through still eyes. Barbarik reminds us that sometimes the one who watches with compassion understands more than the one who acts with pride. In a world that celebrates noise, dominance, and victory, Barbarik was silence, surrender, witness. And from that silence, he saw what warriors could not. He saw that Dharma is not about being right. It's about aligning with a truth greater than our desires, our vows, our emotions. He saw that every sword, every death, every decision was part of something vast and sacred, and in that seeing, he became eternal. So now we ask you, not as an audience, but as a soul walking your own battlefield, would you have done the same? If you had the power to win any battle, would you still choose surrender? If the divine asked for your greatest gift, would you offer it even without knowing why? Or would your ego fight back, thinking it knows better than fate? This is not just a myth. This is a mirror. Barbarik lives in all of us, the part that wants to help, to heal, to protect. But his story warns us that even our purest intentions must be guided by wisdom, or we risk turning justice into control. So tell us, do you believe his sacrifice was justice or divine manipulation? Was he honored or used? And most of all, what does your Dharma demand of you when everything feels unclear? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice matters. And if this story touched you, if it opened a door inside you, share it with someone who needs to remember that power without surrender is only half the truth. Because sometimes, the soul that watches is the soul that awakens.